Hello, everyone. I'm Aksa Taylor, Senior Director of Product Marketing at Abstract Security. Joining me in this interview is Jon Oltsik. He has a lot of experience coming from analyst background, working with organizations of all sizes and different industries. So I'm really curious and I'm really excited to interview him. It's all non-scripted, so this is just going to be a conversation that you will be a part of. Thank you, Joan, for joining me. Let's start with an introduction. Can you tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. I recently retired, I guess about a year ago, so I'm now semi-retired. But before that, I was an analyst in cybersecurity at the Enterprise Strategy Group for 22 years. And before that, I had various roles in the IT industry. So longtime cybersecurity analyst, and now kind of call myself a community activist, but still doing some analyst type work.
Yeah, we definitely see your content out there, so I wouldn't say you're retired. I think semi-retired is a good word. So,
Semi-retired's fine.
how was the transition? What inspired you to go from a practitioner's role to an analyst role?
Well, I was never a practitioner, just to be clear. I was in the industry, in the product side. And I
Wow.
started my career in the storage industry, and then I went to networking and telecoms and network management. And around 2000, 2001, after the internet boom, I was looking for my next job, and some people I knew, kind of my beacons in the industry, said to me, with what you know about the world and what you know about technology, you really ought to look at security because every transition that happened in things like network management, systems management will happen in security. And that was very prescient because I started doing research. I decided to pursue that path, and lo and behold, it really did take place to where security went from a technology practice to really integrated into the business. And that's certainly where we are today.
Great. So that's what inspired you to then go into the research analyst field and learn more about the industry from security lens. And what was your area of expertise as an analyst? Did you focus mainly on like the cloud security, or was there a category that you had a main focus on?
When I started in security in 2003, there were really only a couple of product categories. There was firewalls, there was IDS, IPS, so kind of network security. There was endpoint security, and there was security operations, early SIM. And then, of course, there was app security and data security. So at first, I was a lone wolf and I really looked at everything. And what I tried to do is develop a persona as sort of a proxy for a CISO. So learn the CISO mindset, learn how they not only consumed technologies, but utilized technologies, integrated the security technologies into their business operations. And then from there, I went forward. By the end of my analyst tenure, we had several analysts. So I was really focused on cyber threat management and cyber risk management, actually, and security operations.
Ah, so you've done this for 20 plus years. Obviously, the whole industry, the landscape, the threat landscape also has changed quite a bit in that decade. So how have you seen this evolve, especially the SIM, because I know you made a lot of contribution in the book related to that too. Can you speak a little about that evolution?
Yeah, I mean, early on, we were looking at firewall logs and IDS IPS logs. So there was sort of um, the perimeter of the network and then the DMZ, and we had all these security technologies in the DMZ, and they were all spitting out logs, and we needed a way to aggregate them. And so it was really a function. It was really kind of a security-focused log management system. Over time, that just increased to the amount of data that we wanted to consume, the way we wanted to look at it, the context we wanted to look at that data in, and then we needed decision support. And so SIM grew from really, like I say, a log management system for security to an intelligence system. And as it did that, we saw vendors transition, we saw new innovation, we soon saw new degrees of analytics. Of course, now we're talking about AI and integrated in the product. But I mean, this really brings me back to abstract is it's all about the data. And
Hmm.
so can you collect, process, analyze, and make decisions on that data in a reasonable time frame? And that's gotten harder and harder to do.
Yep, for sure. That's what we see with our prospects and customers as well. There's data is always growing. Like it's not like a one-time integration, like you put something in place and done. No, you have to continuously revise your data strategy. You have to get back to it. You have new sources, new integrations. So it's kind of an evolving process in itself. Now, I have a question, and this is like on my mind, and everyone has a different answer to it, and Google has different answers to it. What, in your opinion, is the difference between a sim and a next gen sim?
Besides marketing, I would say a next gen sim, really what we saw a transition in is when SIM and SOAR started to merge. So SIM, security information and event management, SOAR, security orchestration, what does the A stand for? Automation and response. Is
I
that
think
it?
that's
I can't remember my own acronyms. Um, but that changed the dynamic. So all of a sudden, it wasn't just about collecting and looking at the data. It was what you were going to do with the data. And that involved a level of integration that we hadn't seen before and a level of intelligence that we hadn't seen before. Now, you start to look at those two things, getting the data, analyzing the data, and then responding to the data and using automation tools to do that. Do that at scale. Do that when you now have the cloud platform and cloud development. Do that across your applications. Do that across your IoT devices. Integrate threat intelligence. It becomes a massive, massive scaling problem.
mm,
And then we also saw in that, I'd say the last 10 years, we saw moving from on-premise systems to cloud-based systems because even the best on-premise systems in that time frame required an engineering team of perhaps 10 people to keep the system running well and performing well. And that just didn't make sense when we had all of this compute and storage capacity in the cloud. So I don't know if I answered your question, but I'd say the transitions to automation and to scale and to the compute needs that you had kind of pushed that hierarchy toward next generation SIM.
mm. And how did the end users, the organizations, and you were being a proxy for the CISOs, how did they take this? Did you see like everyone, oh, shiny new tie, that's what I want in my organization, or was there still hesitancy? What did you see? Or did people replace it with something else? Did they want like maybe not SIM. Maybe they wanted like their own data strategy around it with XDR source and everything else that evolved in that space. What did you see with the end users?
A lot of confusion. So remember in that time frame too, we had more mature NDR tools, we had more mature EDR tools, then EDR became XDR, and so there was a lot of confusion. Now, none of that in a sophisticated shop, none of that has replaced the need for SIM because all that data has to aggregate somewhere. And you want to bring all these kind of disparate analytics together someplace where you can make decisions. But there was a lot of confusion. SIM has always been traditionally been a burdensome technology in that it's not plug and play. You have to tune it. You have to have a commitment to detection engineering. You have to be really good at understanding threat intelligence and integrating the threat intelligence that applies to your organization into your SIM, into your rules. Then you had MITRE coming along. So I'm painting a picture of confusion, but that was it. And of course, in that time frame too, Aksa, a lot of customers said, wait a minute, I can't do this anymore. I didn't expect it to be this complex. And that led to the rise of MSSPs and MDR vendors. So there's a lot of dynamics around the fact that the attack surface is increasing, the amount of data is increasing, the complexity of security operations have increased, and the tools, even the tools that have caught up, or that continue to keep up can be complex. So all of those things weigh together.
Has that changed in the most recent years, or I mean, since last you were an analyst, or did you see kind of the same problems still progressing even today?
The problems are still there. I'd say the solutions are have been innovative, have caught up to some extent. So scale, data integration, data pipelining built into the products, better analytics, better integration with automation, and then of course the introduction of AI for decision support and decision making and automation. Now that I want to be cautious about that. I think that's really in the kind of foundational stage, but it does show great promise. So even even those companies who've gone to MDR or MSSPs, now a lot of them have a hybrid model where they do have on-site systems.
Mhm.
They do have on-site SOC analysts, but they're getting some support from a third party.
Hmm. So it's kind of like they have some control over it, but some hands-on, hands-off as well.
Yeah, but the hands-off is for like advanced skills, threat hunting. Think of
Mhm.
it as someone looking over your shoulder and saying, "Well, you're on the right track, but have you considered this?" And maybe you would have considered that, but it would have taken you a fair amount of time, and this just streamlines everything.
Gotcha. Let's talk about, you mentioned data pipelines. Now, if I talk about it, I'm from abstract, so it's just going to look redundant. So I'm going to ask you, what are your thoughts on data pipelines? And it's relatively newer than all the sim space and all, but really curious to hear from a user perspective and from an analyst perspective, what do you think about it? What do you think the future of it is?
Well, the data layer has always been important in this category, and you saw a difference between sort of the top tier SIMs and some of the followers in the amount of events per second they could collect and whether they could aggregate that view. And so that really weeded out some of the lower end or old architecture based SIMs. Um, so it's always been important. We saw a lot of work with the Kafka messaging bus probably about, I don't know, 7 to 10 years ago. And then companies like Cribble coming in. It's critical because it's it's really so the some of the default behavior in SIM over time was, well, we need to collect everything.
Mm-hmm.
And while you do have to collect a lot, you don't have to collect everything. Some of the data is irrelevant, some of it is benign, some of it is very useful for regulatory compliance and not as useful for security, information, and event management. And that data is in different formats. It's at different sources. We need different access for it. And then we have to translate that into actionable data. So that might mean stream processing. So I know I'm in buzzword bingo here, but
I mean,
the
you
point
sound like a
is
report, analyst report right now.
well, that's if the shoe fits. Um, but really what I'm saying is as the amount of data continues to grow, the amount of data oversight, the amount of data management becomes critical for success. And
Mhm,
that's where data pipelining came in. And so that expertise either as a third party or in abstract case built into the product is
mhm.
really critical to making SIM a better system for security operations, decision support, and really proactive security.
So you see this as a foundational block of data strategy in as people think about it, or people think about, how to analyze logs, because otherwise you may have everything, but then you are just fatigued. You have too much and not everything is useful. So it
That's right.
becomes kind of like the first step, like filter, reduce, aggregate, and then analyze and store and so on.
That's right. And it kind of is intuitively it's sort of backward. Is like it's not what analytics do I need, it's what data do I need
Mm,
to get the analytics I need. And so that really is a thought process. A lot of companies need to be guided on this, and that's why the ebook that you put together that I contributed to, I think will be so important.
absolutely. I really appreciate your contributions to it, and I'm So excited to share that. We're almost there. Pre-release is available. If you made it this far, listeners, if you're interested in getting a pre-release of the book, please email us and we'll be happy to get it to you. So that was a little plug. Now I feel like a YouTube influencer. Like, don't forget to subscribe.
That's right. Click
Okay.
the like button.
Okay, going back to the strategy piece of it, and a lot of it is covered in the book with maturity models as well. Okay, that's my last plug. Going back to our conversation, John, in all of this chaos, how did you see the organizations, like in hierarchical sense, in a political sense, work between security teams and just the data teams, like analysts? So IOps, SecOps, did they merge together? Would they work together? Would they have their own platforms? What did you see on that end?
Historically, they had their own tools and platforms, and that's why you needed a team of 10 systems engineers for kind of legacy SIM, on-prem SIM, is because it was a very specialized product, specialized skill set, and it didn't integrate in with some of the other things that you did on monitoring or observability. Now, we have seen a change. We've seen companies standardizing on certain data formats. We've seen merging of at least the data, if not the groups and the tools. But that's kind of a leading edge use case, a leading edge organization that realizes that security data is relevant to the business and certainly to IT, and IT data is relevant to the business and security, and all those things need to blend. And
Mhm.
so, um, relatively new mindset, people really assigning kind of more data specialization, data management specialization. But again, that's not widespread. I expect it to be in the future, but it's not today.
Is there also a concern from security perspective, for example, if they're monitoring insider threat kind of logs and they don't want access to other teams having visibility? Is there that kind of mindset that you saw?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of historical kind of biases around what's protected data and what's not. And certainly there's a lot of sensitive regulated data out there. But if you are in an industry where there's a lot of insider threats, you should be putting the right detection rules in place. You should understand what data you need to collect. You should understand access controls. Um, and so that really should be kind of fundamental in how you design your security operations, your security analytics, versus being afraid that if we have access to the data or people have access to security data, that might be a threat.
That's a very good point. I'm going to highlight that in the podcast. I
Okay.
think we need more of that mindset, especially as the threat landscape is evolving, and they don't care who you are or what kind of data they can expose or have access to. So I think security teams really need to have a more unified mindset when it comes to strategizing and protecting their data operations. Now let's talk about the ebook, because we've talked so much about data strategy. Thank you again for contributing, but what inspired you to contribute to this? You have a million other things on your plate, but what made you like, hey, I want to make some time and contribute to this asset?
I guess I was very enthusiastic about the panel of experts that Abstract put together to work on this. And so for me, not only did I understand that this is a pretty fundamental problem in the industry or for end users, um, but it was an opportunity for me to learn from some of the best experts. And we collaborated. I got to read a lot of the outline and a lot of the early drafts, and it was great for me to again to learn. This is a as an analyst, you tend to be a mile wide and an inch deep, and this allowed me to get a little bit deeper into an area that I absolutely knew needed this kind of oversight and needed this kind of scrutiny.
Mhm. And what was your favorite part? Was there a favorite part? If you had like 100 pages of content. So do you remember anything like, hey, this is really neat. I want to like focus on this. I hope this really helps the users.
I mean, I got jazzed when I saw the outline, and the outline, the comprehensive nature of it was really great because, again, as an analyst and in marketing, you try to go really high level and get something that people are attracted to and then give them a call to action. And this really wasn't that at all. This was an engineering document, albeit in an ebook format, so it's easy to consume, which gets into details. And certainly you can't go into all the details, and you had a lot of people contributing, but it gave you enough to really outline what you need to do to start at the data and then work your way up to the security, analytics, and operations. And as we said before, that's a different perspective, and I think it's the right perspective. So I don't know if I answered your question, but
You did.
that's okay. That's what really got me excited about this.
Awesome. And if there were like three key takeaways that you would like your readers to take from this ebook, what are you hoping that before and after reading this ebook that have this three key takeaways in their mind?
Oh boy. Okay. Um, I'll try to do it. So one is that security data management is iterative. So you're never done.
Hmm.
And that's part of why it's challenging, but what you need to expect. And that is there'll be different data sources, there are different threats, there are changes to your IT infrastructure. You need to be on top of that. And so it really is like across the life cycle, you are iterating on each phase all the time. Um, the second thing is, as we discussed, you have to start by thinking through what data sources you need and for what purposes. And then work with the experts to really fine tune, well, do we need all of this data? What is the data we need? What can we filter out? Again, iterative, you're working on those filtering rules. And then I'd say a third point is the key to success is not only getting the data, getting the right data, iterating on the data, but figuring out how to put it together in a usable and effective, efficient way. Because security is all about timing. And so if you can detect malicious or anomalous behavior earlier, you're more likely to nip it in the bud and prevent damages. And so understanding the data sources, understanding how those need to come together, then understanding the analytics on top of that is really important. So I'm not sure there's anything new there, but those are three key takeaways. But I guess the key is it starts with the data, and the data has to be, you're always thinking about the effectiveness and the efficiency of the data.
Absolutely. And I really like how you said it almost reminded me of this shift left moment with Synapse. Like, do it earlier in the cycle, the filtering, the reduction, and everything, so your analytics are better over the strategy. So yeah, that's maybe we should plan.
Yeah, it's, I mean, that old expression of what is it? An ounce of prevention's worth a pound of cure. It's really like thinking through the architecture, thinking through the engineering requirements, the data requirements up front will save you a lot of money and headache at the back end.
I love that. That's a good, again, that's a good like a thought, like a philosophy picture to have with a quote. Thank you for that, John. We're almost near the end of our podcast, so if there's anything you'd like to tell our listeners of this episode, um, please go ahead.
I would just say that we go through cycles of innovation in every technology. And for instance, there was a time you couldn't imagine a new endpoint security tool because McAfee, Symantec, and a few others just dominated the space. So why would anyone invest in that technology? We're in the same period of with SIM where there's a tremendous amount of churn in the customers and a tremendous amount of innovation. And so that's one of the reasons why I'm still jazzed about this space is because it's changed so much over the last 5 years that some of the tools that were state of the art 5 years ago are now struggling. And customers need a new degree of scale and integration and innovation and cutting edge technology integration. Um, so it's something to pay attention to if you're a CISO. Um, and I would say to practitioners is, like I said, watch the market, ask a lot of questions, and really assess your needs and your needs a few years from now, and then kind of watch where the market goes and how it aligns to what you need.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. We really appreciate all the knowledge you've shared. And I'm really excited for this episode to air as well. And thank you to all our listeners, viewers. I hope you download the ebook and also leave us your feedback on what you thought about it. We worked hard and we're really excited to share what we worked on with you. I hope you enjoy it as much as we enjoyed writing it. Thank you.
Thank you.